I never believed in miracles until Christmas Eve 2019, when I discovered a small child rummaging through trash behind my apartment complex. What I learned about her situation completely shattered me, but what happened next transformed both our lives in ways I never imagined possible. My name is James Connor, and this is the story of how a broken man and a forgotten little girl found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from the pieces. The December air was brutal that night, cutting through my jacket like frozen razors. I stepped outside my building just before midnight on Christmas Eve, heading to another solitary shift at the warehouse security job I'd taken to avoid human contact. 3 years of isolation had become my normal. But something caught my eye near the dumpsters. A small shadow moving methodically through the refuse. My first thought was maybe a raccoon or stray cat, but as I got closer, my blood turned to ice. It was a child. A tiny girl, maybe 6 or 7, with practiced movements of someone who'd done this terrible task before. Her small hands, purple from cold, sifted through discarded food containers with heartbreaking efficiency. "Hey sweetie," I called gently, my voice rusty from disuse. She spun around, eyes wide with pure terror, clutching a half-eaten burger to her chest like a treasure. "Please don't run," I said, raising my hands slowly. "I won't hurt you, I promise." She studied my face with ancient wariness that no child should possess. Her name, she whispered after an eternity, was Grace. She wore a threadbare pink coat 3 sizes too big, and her blonde hair hung in matted tangles around sunken cheeks. "What are you looking for out here, Grace?" Though I already knew the devastating answer. "Something to eat," she admitted, so quietly I barely heard her over the wind. Those 4 words hit me like a freight train. No child should be scavenging for food. Not on Christmas Eve. Not ever. "Where's your family, honey?" Her face crumpled. "Gone," she whispered. "All gone." That's when something inside me cracked open, something I'd sealed shut 3 years ago when my world imploded. The paternal instinct I thought died with Emma and our unborn son Alex. You see, I used to be different. I used to have a wife named Emma whose smile could light up our tiny apartment. We'd spend evenings planning our future, her hand guiding mine to her growing belly as we debated baby names and painted the nursery soft green because we wanted to be surprised. Emma would whisper to our unborn son every night, telling him about the world he'd soon enter, about the father who couldn't wait to meet him. We'd built dreams on that foundation, dreams of family dinners, first steps, bedtime stories, teaching him to ride a bike. But dreams have a way of shattering without warning. Emma went into labor on a gray Tuesday morning in April. I drove to the hospital with trembling hands and a heart bursting with anticipation. I called everyone we knew, paced the waiting room like a caged animal, imagining the moment I'd become a father. Then the doctor appeared, unable to meet my eyes. "Complications," he said. "Unexpected. Rare." In 2 hours, I lost everything that mattered: Emma, baby Alex, our entire future. The man who entered that hospital ready to become a father left as a hollow shell. For 3 years, I existed like a ghost. I moved to a smaller place, took a job requiring minimal human interaction, built walls around my heart so high that nothing could penetrate them. I convinced myself this was enough, that I didn't need anyone. Until Grace. "What do you mean gone?" I asked her, kneeling to her level. Grace's lower lip trembled as she fought back tears. "I lived with Grandma Betty after my daddy left and Mama couldn't take care of me anymore. Betty was the only person who ever wanted me." Her voice grew smaller. "But Grandma got real sick last month. She had this cough that got worse and worse. We didn't have money for doctors, so she just kept taking cough drops and sleeping a lot. My throat tightened, recognizing the pain in her voice. One morning I tried to wake her up for breakfast, but she wouldn't open her eyes. I shook her and called her name, but she just wouldn't wake up. Grace's tears finally spilled over. The people in uniforms came and took her away. They said I had to go live with different families now. Grace wiped her nose on her sleeve. But nobody wants to keep me. They keep moving me to new houses, and the last people, they didn't care if I was there or not. So I ran away. I thought if I came back to our old neighborhood, maybe Grandma Betty would come home too. My heart shattered completely. This child had been failed by every system meant to protect her, bounced around like she was nothing more than paperwork. Forgotten, discarded, left to survive on scraps and hope. Grace, I said, my voice thick with emotion, how long have you been out here alone? 3 days, she whispered. I found a place to sleep in the basement next door. There's a broken window I can fit through. 3 days. A 6-year-old had been surviving alone for 3 days in December weather. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. Christmas Day had just begun. Grace, listen to me very carefully, I said, looking straight into her frightened eyes. You don't have to do this alone anymore. She looked confused, wary. Adults had made promises before, they'd all been broken. I know you don't know me, and I know grown-ups have probably disappointed you before, but I promise you this, I'm not going anywhere. Something in my voice, maybe the raw honesty or the way my own pain reflected in my eyes, made her shoulders relax slightly. How about we start by getting you somewhere warm and getting some real food in you? I asked. Grace hesitated, torn between desperation and survival instinct, but the cold was seeping through her thin coat and the burger in her hands was clearly spoiled on one side. She nodded. My apartment was modest but clean. I hadn't had visitors in 3 years, and it showed. The space was functional but sterile, no photographs, no personal touches, nothing that spoke of the life I'd once dreamed of building. But watching Grace's eyes widen at the simple warmth of central heating, I saw my home differently. Through the eyes of someone who had nothing, my nothing suddenly felt like something. Let me run you a hot bath, I said, heading toward the bathroom. You must be frozen solid. As the tub filled, I gathered some of my smaller clothes for Grace, a t-shirt that would be like a nightgown on her, clean socks, sweatpants with a drawstring. While she soaked in the warm water, probably her first real bath in days, I heated up canned soup and made grilled cheese sandwiches. Simple food, but warm and filling. When Grace emerged from the bathroom, swimming in my clothes, her hair clean and her cheeks pink from the hot water, she looked like a completely different child. Still thin, still cautious, but human again. She ate quietly, methodically, as if afraid the food might vanish. I watched her careful bites and realized she was trying to make it last. There's more, I said gently. You can eat as much as you want. Grace's eyes filled with tears again. Really? Really? As she ate, my mind was racing. I couldn't just let her return to the system that had failed her so completely, but I also couldn't just keep her without going through proper channels. I thought about Emma, about the nursery we'd painted, about our dreams of caring for a child. Maybe this was why I'd survived when she hadn't. Maybe this was my second chance at the family I'd lost. That night, as Grace slept fitfully on my couch, I made phone calls. I contacted Child Protective Services, explained the situation, and requested information about emergency guardianship procedures. I called my supervisor to request time off. I reached out to David, a lawyer friend from my past life, despite the late hour. David answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. "James? It's Christmas morning, man. Is everything okay?" "David, I need your help," I said, and for the first time in 3 years, I meant it. As I explained the situation, I watched Grace toss and turn on the couch. Even in sleep, she couldn't find peace. Her small face was creased with worry, her hands clutching the blanket like a lifeline. "This is going to be complicated," David warned. "The system doesn't like it when people just show up wanting to adopt. There are procedures, background checks, home studies." "I don't care how complicated it is," I said, my voice firm with determination I hadn't felt since Emma died. "This little girl has been failed by everyone who was supposed to protect her. I won't be another person who walks away." Silence on the other end. "James, are you sure about this? I mean, it's been 3 years since Emma and Alex, and you've been pretty isolated. Taking care of a traumatized child is going to be—" "I know what it's going to be," I interrupted, "and I know I'm not the same person I was before. But maybe that's exactly why I can help her. We both know what it's like to lose everything. We both know what it's like to be alone." When I hung up, I found Grace standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You're still here," she whispered, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Of course I'm still here," I said, kneeling down to her level. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." "But in the morning," she started. "In the morning, we're going to figure out how to make this work. You're not going back to sleeping in basements or searching through garbage. Not while I'm here." Grace threw her arms around my neck, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years suddenly began to thaw. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, court hearings, and bureaucratic obstacles. I threw myself into the process with intensity I'd once reserved for avoiding life altogether. I attended every meeting, completed every form, submitted to every background check and psychological evaluation the system required. I took parenting classes and attended therapy sessions designed to assess my readiness to care for a child. Throughout it all, Grace remained in my care under emergency placement status. I watched her begin to relax, to trust that I wouldn't disappear like everyone else had. But healing wasn't straightforward. Some nights, Grace would wake up screaming from nightmares, reliving the morning she'd found Betty unresponsive. I would sit with her until the terror passed, holding her small hand and reminding her that she was safe. Other times she would hoard food in her room, terrified it would be taken away. I would gently redistribute it to the kitchen, explaining again and again that there would always be more. There were moments when she would shut down completely, retreating into herself, as if preparing for me to abandon her too. During those times, I would simply stay present, continuing our routines, showing her through actions rather than words that I was committed to staying. I learned things I never thought I'd need to know: how to braid hair, how to help with homework, how to navigate a 6-year-old's complex emotions while processing my own grief and fear. But I also learned about joy again. The first time Grace laughed, really laughed, at a silly joke I made while cooking breakfast, I felt my heart remember what happiness could sound like. When she brought home her first perfect score in spelling, her face glowing with pride as she showed me the paper, I understood what it meant to be proud of someone else's accomplishments. The day she started calling me Daddy instead of James, quietly and tentatively, as if testing the word, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry tears of gratitude and overwhelming love. Have you ever felt like you were meant to meet someone? I asked during one of my therapy sessions, 6 months after finding Grace. Dr. Martinez, the counselor assigned to evaluate my fitness as a parent, looked up from her notes. What makes you feel that way? I considered the question. Before I found Grace, I was just existing, going through the motions. I convinced myself I was fine, but I wasn't living. I was hiding. I paused, thinking about Emma, about the life we'd planned that had been cut short. When Emma died, when we lost Alex, I thought that was it for me. I thought my chance at being a father died with them. But maybe this was always part of the plan. Maybe I needed to go through that loss to understand what Grace was feeling. Maybe I needed to know what it was like to have your whole world disappear so I could help her rebuild hers. Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. And how has caring for Grace affected your own healing process? I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. She saved me. I thought I was rescuing her that night, but she was rescuing me too. She gave me a reason to live again, a purpose. I looked out the window, where Grace was playing on the playground visible from the office, her laughter carrying on the spring air. I was drowning in my grief and didn't even realize it until I had someone else to care for, someone who needed me to be strong. She made me want to be the man Emma always believed I could be. The courthouse was busier than I'd expected for a Tuesday morning. I sat in the hallway outside family court, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. Grace sat beside me wearing her favorite yellow dress, not the tattered pink coat she'd been wearing that first night, but a beautiful new dress that actually fit her properly. "Are you nervous?" she asked, her small hand finding mine. "A little," I admitted. "Are you?" Grace considered this seriously. "I think I'm excited nervous. Like when you're about to open a present you really, really want, but you're scared it might not be what you hoped for." I squeezed her hand. "What are you hoping for?" "For you to be my real daddy forever, not just until someone decides I have to go somewhere else." My throat tightened. "That's what I'm hoping for too." When our case was called, Grace and I walked into the courtroom hand in hand. David was there, along with the social worker who had been overseeing Grace's case and the guardian ad litem appointed to represent Grace's interests. Judge Patricia Morales looked over the paperwork spread across her desk. She'd been a family court judge for 18 years and had seen every kind of situation imaginable, but there was something about this case that had stayed with her since the first hearing. "Mr. Connor," Judge Morales began, "when we first met 6 months ago, you were a single man with no experience raising children, requesting emergency guardianship of a child you'd known for less than 24 hours. I'll admit, I had my concerns. However," the judge continued, "the reports I've received from Dr. Martinez, from Grace's teachers, from the social workers who have monitored your home, all paint the same picture. A man who has dedicated himself completely to healing and caring for a child who desperately needed both." She looked directly at Grace. "And young lady, I understand you have something you'd like to say." Grace stood up, her voice clear and strong. "Your Honor, James saved my life. Not just that first night when I was cold and hungry, but every day since then. He helped me remember what it felt like to be safe. He teaches me things and helps me with my homework and braids my hair, even when he does it crooked." A ripple of gentle laughter went through the courtroom. "He stays with me when I have bad dreams and he always keeps his promises. I know he's my real daddy because he chose me and he keeps choosing me every single day." Judge Morales smiled. "Well then, by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. James Connor, you are now the legal father of Grace Connor." The gavel came down with a satisfying thud. I felt my knees nearly give out with relief and joy. I looked down at Grace, who was grinning so widely I thought her face might split in half. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," I confirmed, lifting her up in a hug that conveyed 3 years of grief transformed into overwhelming love. That evening, as we celebrated with takeout pizza in our living room, our tradition for special occasions, Grace presented me with something she'd been working on in art therapy. It was a drawing of two people holding hands in front of a house with the words, "My family," written in careful letters across the top. "This is us," she said, suddenly shy. "Is that okay?" I felt tears spring to my eyes as I knelt down to her level. "It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's perfect." I looked at the drawing more closely. The house had blue curtains in the windows, just like the ones we'd picked out together for our new home. The garden had sunflowers that Grace had insisted we plant, and the two figures were smiling, their hands intertwined. "Can I tell you something?" I said, hanging the picture on the refrigerator in the place of honor. "What?" "I used to think that families were only the people you were born with, but you taught me that the best families are the ones we choose, the ones we build with love and patience and commitment." Grace climbed into my lap, something she'd started doing when she needed comfort or wanted to share something important. "James," she said softly. "Yes, honey. Thank you for not walking away that night." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Thank you for letting me stay."